Support for this project is provided by GL Veneer. Visit GL Veneer to see their large selection of veneer, live edge slabs, and custom plywood. You can find GL Veneer at glveneer.com or click the link down in the description below. Welcome back to the shop. I'm starting another veneer project today. This is what I would consider a beginner project. It's essentially a box, and then we're going to veneer it. The nice thing about veneer projects is you can often use material that you may already have in the shop. So for this project, I'm using a combination of Pluma ply. These are some cutoffs that I had hanging around. Pluma ply has a plywood core and an MDF veneer on both sides. So I've cut the back and the two sides for the box. I still need to cut the top and the bottom, and for that I'm going to use regular 3/4 inch birch plywood. The only important thing about the material that you're using for your veneer project is that it has a smooth surface, and I often avoid products like MDF because MDF simply doesn't hold the screw like plywood does, and it doesn't have the same rigidity. So there's some rigidity in this, even though this is the back. If you were to do this with MDF, you could really get this to sag. So I try to avoid MDF when I'm working with veneer. So now let's go ahead and attach the two sides to the back of the box, and then we'll get a measurement for the top and bottom. I'm using a bead of glue, and it's a little trick. You can use your finger as a guide to get a nice straight line like that. And I'm just going to tack these parts together, making sure that I'm flush at the top and the back. I'm using an 1.5 inch nail. Here's a little trick I got from Jeff on one of our episodes of Today's Craftsman. I'll find the center of the veneer. That's going to be the center of the veneer here. I'll transfer that line and pre-drill and countersink for screws. I like to work on a piece of MDF or plywood so I can move my workpiece around without actually moving my workpiece around. It's also nice to have a smooth surface to reference off of, because if I'm flat on the bottom, I should be flush at the top. Now that I have the sides attached to the back, I can take a measurement to cut the top and bottom. I'm attaching the top and bottom the same way I attach the sides, with a little wood glue, and then I'll tack the parts in place and use screws for a stronger connection. Now that I have the box made, the next step is to trim the front edge to hide the edge of the plywood. And I'm veneering this project with Hawaiian monkey pod veneer. I don't have any solid boards of Hawaiian monkey pod, but I do have this piece of zebra wood, and it's actually a pretty close match. So the next step is to turn this into molding that will measure 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch for the edge. Okay, now that I have the molding made, I'll cut my miters with this 10-inch Hitachi. And in case you're wondering why I have two miter saws, this is just a saw that I've had for a very long time. And you can see it's set up with a sacrificial fence on a 45-degree angle. So it's just a very handy saw for cutting small moldings like this. One of the nice things about this setup is I can line up my mark with the kerf in the sacrificial fence to make the cut. Just for a little rare YouTube woodworking honesty, I made that cut wrong, but I got lucky because I can still use the molding. I don't have to go and make more molding. But instead of cutting this way, I cut that way. But as you can see, as long as I don't screw up again, I can still use this molding. So all part of woodworking. We've all been there, and that's not too bad, but that's just the way it goes. Let's see if this is any better. And that's right on the money. I'll bring the camera over so you can see what I'm talking about here. One thing I am going to have to do is fill this right there. No big deal. It's actually going to get covered with veneer, so maybe I won't even fill it. I'll fill it when I fill the holes with the auto body Bondo. I'm attaching the trim with wood glue and 23 gauge pin nails, and once I've nailed the trim off, I'll use a few of these bandy clamps as well. I let these bandy clamps sit here for a bit to get a nice glue joint. Now I can remove the clamps and get to work on the base. Before ripping the boards to width, I'll cut them to a rough length, and that makes them a little bit easier to hold against the fence. I'm referring to this part of the base as the foot and this part as the apron. Off camera, I set the fence at 1 3/8 inches and I cut a 10-degree angle on this foot. Now you wouldn't want to make this cut in one pass because that's a lot of material to remove in one cut. So I'm going to lower the blade and make that cut in 3 passes. When I build the base, I'll keep the bevel on the outside and set the apron back on the foot 1 inch at the front and back, and join the parts together with pocket hole screws. If this is your first time seeing this pneumatic pocket hole jig, we built this on the Today's Craftsman channel, and I'll have a link to that video down in the description below. This is the veneer that I used on my last project. It's Hawaiian monkey pod. When you purchase veneer, it'll come in a box just like this. When I used this veneer last time, you always want to think about what your next project will be, how you're going to cut the veneer for the project that you're working on. And you can see I've got a nice long piece here that's going to allow me to wrap the cabinet with the waterfall effect. I've got some of these corn toss bean bags. These are great for holding the veneer down because it has a curl from being shipped in the box. I've measured and marked the veneer, so I have a left side, a center, and a right, so the grain will waterfall around the cabinet. I've labeled the parts with an arrow pointing towards the front, and I'll cut the veneer using a razor knife would be better, but I can't find mine. So I'm using a razor blade and a framing square. As you can see, I've made some progress with the veneer. First applying the veneer to the back of the cabinet, then the two sides, and last will be the top. And that's pretty much the order that I always work in when I'm working with veneer because it does a good job of hiding the seams. You wouldn't want the seam at the top of the cabinet. Now I'm ready to apply the top, the last piece. I'll make sure that my label is in the right position. So this says center, front, pointing out towards the front of the cabinet, and that should give me that perfect waterfall effect. I'll apply the contact cement to the back of the veneer and the top of the cabinet. This is the non-flammable contact cement. It's definitely not as toxic smelling as the solvent-based contact cement, and I've had some good results with it, so I may be making the switch for good. I have to say it is nice not to have a big respirator on while I'm working with it, and just not to have the really harsh smell of the solvent-based contact cement. I will apply 2 coats of the contact cement, just like the solvent-based, allowing the contact cement to dry in between coats. I've allowed the second coat of contact cement to dry to touch, and now I'll use these sticks to position the veneer. Contact cement only sticks to contact cement, so using these sticks allows me to move the veneer around so I have an even overhang all the way around. Again, I'm going to double check to make sure that my label is facing in the correct direction. Everything looks good. I'm going to remove this stick here and apply a little pressure in the front. This is kind of odd, but I've dealt with something like this before. You can see the contact cement isn't sticking the way contact cement usually sticks. I don't know if it's because it's very hot and humid today or because I let the second coat dry too long. But there is a fix for it, and that is to use a clothes iron, and that will help create a very strong bond. So same situation, I'm going to remove these sticks. I guess I'm thinking if I'm having this problem, someone out there may have this problem as well. So now I'm going to use this clothes iron and work the veneer in, and that should help activate the glue and create a good bond. So I'm going to continue to move the clothes iron, getting the glue hot, the wood veneer hot, and then I'll use the piece of wood that I use to kind of put pressure on the veneer. You can see how the iron worked, and I've got a good bond here now with the veneer. And the next step is to trim the overhang off with a flush cut bit in the router. Okay, and here's the cabinet finished. I got to tell you, this monkey pod is really sharp. I like the look of this grain. Very similar to the zebra wood on the outside. I think it works good with the walnut base, and it's just a really nice look. It lines up, I think, really good with the waterfall effect. I like the grain in the back. I like finishing the back of cabinets. If you're going to make a piece of custom furniture, you might as well go the extra mile. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, you might think that this looks pretty familiar, and that's because I built almost this same exact cabinet about 8 or 9 years ago. I ended up having to take that video down because it was demonetized because of the music I used. You'll notice I barely use music at all anymore, and that's the main reason for it. I don't really think music adds to my videos anyway. But it's a nice piece of furniture. I made this for my son. It matches the end tables that I built him. So it's kind of nice to have a matching set. I did make a full-length video on how to finish this cabinet. The exterior or the outside of the cabinet is finished with waterlocks, which is like a wipe-on varnish. You could also use wipe-on poly. And the inside is brush painted. So I made the video to go over a few of the little tips to help you get that really nice sharp line at the end or at the edge here. If you'd like to build this piece of furniture, I have the plans for it. You can click on the link right here and check it out. And it'll have a link to the step-by-step video right here on YouTube to help guide you through the project. My goal is to help people or woodworkers make the furniture for their home. It's a lot of fun to get messages and see Instagram stories with the furniture that I've made here on my channel being made somewhere else out in the world. Sometimes in the States, sometimes, you know, as far away as Australia or Ireland. It's really cool. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Nice to have another piece of furniture added to my design plans. Right now, I think I have about 30 different pieces of furniture, maybe 25 pieces of furniture, a couple shop projects and a couple outdoor projects. But that's the idea, to keep building that furniture portfolio and helping people build the furniture for their home. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Before you start your next woodworking project, please visit my website at johnpeters.com. With the large variety of projects to choose from, I'm sure you'll find something that will inspire you to spend more time in the shop and result in a beautiful piece of furniture for your home. Well, I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I really like this clean, modern look, and I think the bookcase is going to look really nice in my living room. I'm not going to put it in my living room for a couple of weeks because I'm doing some work to the space, but once I do, I'll probably post some pictures on Facebook or maybe even make a short video. Now, I know in the beginning of the video I said this was a simple build, and I should say it's a simple build if you're used to making cabinets because it's not a minimal tool build. But that being said, it really is just a plywood box covered with veneer. And the only joints that aren't butt joints on this project are the miter joints on the face frame. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.